Good evening and welcome to the Worst of Woke Awards. Tonight we celebrate this past year's greatest achievements in woke TV and cinema, over the course of which Hollywood unleashed a brutal, sadistic and seemingly endless onslaught against audiences already battered by the horrifying ordeal that was 2022. Sequels, Disney live-action remakes, redundant superhero content, songs that sound like they were commissioned by the CIA Enhanced Interrogation Unit, updates for a modern audience, updates for an ancient queen, girl bosses, character deconstructions, disappointments, depravities and desecrations characterised a year which must go down as the worst year for cinema and TV in living memory. 2023. Hell is empty and all the Hollywood productions are here. Thank you to everyone who voted in this year's Worst of Woke Awards. Over 300,000 votes have been cast across 20 categories. Keep in mind that although I, the despot, bestow these awards on their worthy recipients, all winners have been decided by the people, and their will is herein reflected.
Reflection of myself.
Please welcome my co-host for the evening, the despot's minion and channel mascot, Karen iPhone. We hope that our ceremony tonight will go some way to helping audiences recover from the nightmare ordeal that was 2023, and that you enjoy the show. By far the most prolific offender of the year was Disney, who deservedly lost over $1 billion at the box office with a run of flops so limp that Stephen Hawking would have looked like a Mr. Universe contender by comparison. Indiana Jones 5 and The Marvels became the two biggest box office bombs of all time. The superhero genre finally collapsed under the weight of 20 years of spandex, increasingly worn out tropes, and in more recent years, a mountain of trash. And Star Wars collapsed under the weight of Lizzo. Then Ahsoka came crashing down behind it, smashing headfirst into the smouldering pile of rubble that was once the greatest movie franchise in history. Netflix's Egyptology department astonished the world and overturned thousands of years of history with the discovery that
Cleopatra was black.
Disney's Department of Industrialized Plagiarism angered the world and overturned decades of critical and popular consensus around Walt Disney's 1937 masterpiece, Snow White. Their views expressed by their eager puppet, Rachel Zegler, now one of the most memed, thumbnailed, mocked and maligned individuals in internet history. The Hollywood actors and writers went on strike, eliciting a tidal wave of national indifference not seen since Tim Scott dropped out of the presidential race several months later. Jonathan Majors took on the role of a brutal, violent villain. He also played Kang in Ant-Man 3. And Marvel Phase 5 completely derailed, with Marvel content now increasingly seen as culturally irrelevant and commercially worthless. It was also a year of historic firsts. Mindy Kaling became the first South Asian female hack of colour to update Scooby-Doo for a modern audience. Velma became the first TV show of the current year era to unite the internet. In a moment reminiscent of World War I soldiers from both sides playing football in no man's land on Christmas Day 1914, people from across the political spectrum came together to collectively tear that mean-spirited, bitter, sadistic disgrace to shreds. Superhero movie number 6574, also known as Blue Beetle, was the first Hispanic amalgamation of Iron Man, Ant-Man and Spider-Man to lose 9 figures at the box office. Will Smith became the first cuckold of colour to have his pathetic Oscar bait trash, Emancipation, laughed back in his face. Queen Cleopatra gave Jada Pinkett Smith the distinction of being the first producer to successfully complete a Netflix production on a budget of $200. Charmaine Obaid-Chinoy became the first woman.
The first woman.
A feat previously accomplished only by Jennifer Lawrence. She also became the first person of colour.
And the first person of color.
And The Marvels became the first movie to feature women. On the gender front, Ezra Miller became the first plurality of individuals in the form of a single person to play a plurality of individuals in a box office bomb, and an irrelevant side character in the impressively forgettable third-rate animation Elemental became the first non-binary glob of sentient water in a Pixar production. Just last month, Disney Marvel achieved a breakthrough in non-invasive sedative medicine with Echo, featuring the Marvel Universe's first hearing-impaired Native American differently abled female murderer of colour. Fanbait marketing, a trend which emerged during the marketing campaign for the box office bomb Ghostbusters 2016, finally met its long overdue death. Barbie's extremely positive, though very misleading, marketing campaign was a huge factor in making Barbie the most successful movie of the year. The Velma fanbait trailer received a dislike ratio of 91%, and that show was a miserable flop. Disney's Snow White remake fanbait strategy massively backfired, forcing an enormously expensive delay and reshoot, and setting up live-action remake 19 as a financially ruinous flop. On that positive note, our first category recognises a positive change made in the culture over the past year: Best Cancellation. The nominees are The Late Late Show with James Corden. Nobody's favourite plagiarist finally had his failing show shit-canned by CBS after nearly a decade of bumbling incompetence. Corden was the least popular and least watched host in the show's 30-year history. The unreleased Batgirl movie. Given the failure of almost every superhero project in 2023 and Disney's attempt to turn Marvel into a female-led franchise, culminating in the historic disaster that was The Marvels, cancelling a Batgirl movie commissioned by now ousted political activist executives was probably a good move that saved Warner a massive amount of money and spurred audiences from the 48 millionth generic superhero movie. That said, the movie could well be the greatest masterpiece never seen. The problem with Jon Stewart.
The problem with white people. The truth is, America has always prioritized white comfort over black survival.
The problem with Jon Stewart is that nobody watched it.
I don't know how many seasons The Problem with Jon Stewart ran for, nor do I know of anyone who watched it, but I did hear a rumour that a guy in Newfoundland watched half an episode once while waiting for Paris Hilton's debut production to finish downloading, though I suspect this is just an internet urban legend. Willow. In 2022, Disney finally released the show that the Willow fandom had been screaming out for, an annoying lesbian couple building their TikTok following as they walk aimlessly around a CGI soundstage meant to look vaguely like a Middle-earth knockoff.
You mean like verbally?
I mean like defending yourself against someone who wants to hurt you.
No.
I mean like...
You mean like...
Willow was cancelled and deleted from Disney Plus servers so that Disney could declare it a tax write-off. The show now holds the distinction of being not only figuratively, but literally unwatchable. No one actually knows if Willow was in the show, almost no one watched it, and the few people that did can't remember. Gotham Knights, cancelled after one season. If Gen Z was a low-budget, incompetently made TV show, they would be Gotham Knights. As per established tradition, the first award will be presented by Karen iPhone.
The winner of Best Cancellation is James Corden.
Last year, I predicted that James Corden's win for Worst Adaptation would be the last award of his career. Well, James Corden saw that prediction and responded with,
"Oh, you couldn't be more wrong, sir."
And I was wrong. James Corden, congratulations on your second Worst of Woke award. Here to present the award, Patrick Stewart.
When the presenters are up here and when the recipients are receiving their awards, don't stand at the back of the stage with your hands in your pockets, looking around as though you wished you were anywhere but here.
I'm not surprised James Corden won a second Worst of Woke award. He strikes me as someone who enjoys having seconds.
From where I was sitting, I can see your belly. And that was right over there at the back of the room. These people down here,
Sorry, I'm waiting for the punchline. Go on.
You should be less worried about the punchline and more worried about your waistline.
Congratulations to James Corden. We sincerely hope never to see you again. Our second category is the Despot's Pardon, as an act of benevolence and in acknowledgement that even in the darkest of times there is still good to be found. I, the Despot, will, in response to the supplications of the subscribers to this channel, officially pardon one actor or actress who gave a particularly strong performance that rose above the level of the production in which they were involved. The nominees are Iman Vellani for her spirited performance as Kamala Khan in The Marvels. The Marvels will pass into legend as one of the most complete, critical and commercial disasters ever to have been excreted into theatres. But even among the catastrophic direction, lunatic editing, disgraceful acting, absurdly bad fight choreography, and a script whose very existence is the strongest evidence yet acquired that there is no God, Iman Vellani shone through. Her enthusiasm, personality, natural charm and screen presence shone out of The Marvels like a gem in a latrine. Almost every review I have seen of the argument against sentient existence that is The Marvels singles out Iman Vellani for praise. We look forward to seeing Iman in something that isn't complete and utter trash, and here express our confidence that she has a bright future ahead of her. Jude Law for his performance in Disney live-action remake number 17, or LAR 17. Modern remakes are sewage, but Disney live-action remakes in particular are special. They are the place where sewage goes to die and rot thereafter in a putrescent mound of otherworldly horror. Disney LARs are absolute abominations, and LAR 17 is one of the worst movies in the worst movie genre. Everyone in LAR 17 was either an awkward-looking child actor stumbling through performances that were dismal, even for children.
She has his hat! What have you done with Peter?
Or a disengaged adult extra performing hammy pantomime faces. The only character in the entire movie that felt human was Jude Law's Captain Hook. The only emotion the movie generated came from him. He captured the pathos of the classic Hook character and carried every scene he was in. Jude Law could have been one of the great Captain Hooks, but alas, Disney. LAR 17 was like a pile of trash swirling through space, but barely holding together around the gravitational center point of Jude Law's Captain Hook.
My once and best friend banished me, all because I missed mine.
Ryan Gosling for his performance as Ken in Barbie. Seeing Ken liberate the disenfranchised, penuried Kens of Barbieland and lead them as they tapped into their unrealized masculine potential was perhaps the most just and beautiful movie moment of the year. And the director of Barbie, Greta Gerwig, decided to smash that moment to pieces in a mean-spirited, evil ending in which the villain, Barbie, is rewarded for her restoration of the tyrannical, old guard matriarchal regime. The movie's hero, Ken, was left broken, impoverished, alone and oppressed, his heroic efforts rendered irrelevant. Barbie was a tragedy unaware of its own pathos. In the hands of a lesser actor, Ken could easily have been a ham-fisted, two-dimensional, bumbling idiot who falls flat on his face. Fortunately, Gosling's charismatic, hilarious, nuanced performance, over the course of which he demonstrated incredible range, made Ken the most human character in the movie and the only likable one. Ryan Gosling's Ken was a truly iconic performance, probably the only one of the year, and Ken will go down as one of the great beaten heroes of cinema history.
Okay, come on in. I'll play the guitar at you.
Oh, yay!
The recipient of the Despot's Pardon is Ryan Gosling.
Yes.
Moving on now to most deserved flop.
It's not about money. It's about sending a message.
2023 was a seminal year for film culture. Audiences overwhelmingly rejected the stale, cowardly, repetitive, predictable, preachy trash that Hollywood has been manufacturing for nearly a decade. LAR 17 was the worst received LAR movie yet. LAR 18 was supposed to make $1 billion, and despite fixing the racial defects of the original Ariel with Disney's corrective live-action casting, the movie didn't even get close to $600 million. This latest cash grab plagiarism finished its box office run a miserable flop that lost Disney around $130 million, a just outcome. And the reaction to Lar 19, the Snow White remake?
You know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so.
Well, we'll get to that later in the show. The hero in spandex saves the world, plot bombed at every attempt. Shazam 2, Ant-Man 3, Blue Beetle, The Flash, Aquaman 2, and The Marvels, all garbage, all failures that caused the rotten edifice the superhero genre had become to finally come crashing down in a massive and long overdue collapse. I predicted in my Marvels video that the year would finish without a single live-action superhero movie in the box office top 10, that Wonka would displace Ant-Man 3 for the number 10 spot, and that Aquaman 2 would bomb. My predictions were correct. The era of the superhero movie is over. The Indiana Jones franchise that had long awaited execution in the dungeons of Disney Lucasfilm was finally put out of its misery with the release of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. The only good that came out of that abomination was that it was one of the biggest box office bombs in history, cementing Kathleen Kennedy's rightful place as the worst Hollywood producer of all time. Disney's 100-year anniversary animated classic imitation movie, Wish, disintegrated at the box office and was so generic, bland and stilted that many viewers expressed the belief that Disney used ChatGPT to draft the movie's premise. Rejection of the movie was near universal among both audiences and critics, and the term adorkable emerged in the backlash against Disney's latest bland, soulless animation to describe the sexless, boring, powerful girl boss protagonist who seemed little more than an amalgamation of the previous 5 boring, sexless, powerful girl boss protagonists. The adorable dork Disney princess character performs kung fu, has an inoffensive personality characterized by thoroughly played out millennial self-deprecation humor, and her only real weakness is her lack of belief in herself, which is invariably overcome at the expense of the evil white male villain. But what was the most deserving flop of 2023? Our nominees are The Marvels.
Pleasure to announce to this lovely room full 2 new faces.
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
My friend was just murdered.
The Flash. Lar 18.
He's compassionate and kind.
He's a human. You're a mermaid.
Yes.
Wish.
The people of Rosas are good. They deserve more than...
I decide what everyone deserves.
The winner of most deserving flop with half of all votes cast is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Indiana Jones 5 has just about every feature of modern Hollywood trash that audiences have grown thoroughly sick of. A studio refusing to do something new and original, instead sinking their claws into an old franchise that should have been left alone in a cynical attempt at a nostalgia bait cash grab. Junk grade CGI, excessive runtime, a massive budget that doesn't show up on screen, hideous cinematography, some scenes too dark, others too yellow. One underwater scene is so ill-conceived, ugly and poorly shot that it's visually incomprehensible. The action scenes are excessively choppy, frenetic and messy, and make extensive use of unconvincing girl boss choreography that shatters immersion to the point of insulting the audience's intelligence. At one point, the movie's villain, Helena Shaw, jumps from a tuk-tuk onto a moving car and starts slamming a hired henchman's gun-toting arm onto the car frame. And, of course, our old hero, Indy, is written as a broken-down old man who needs to be pulled out of his nihilistic waking coma, and who better to pull him out of it than a strong, powerful, stunning, brave,
resourceful, daring, beautiful, self-sufficient,
and completely necessary
female counterpart.
If Ryan Gosling's Ken was an iconic performance, Phoebe Waller-Bridge's Helena Shaw was an anti-icon who will come to symbolise the girl boss character trope that has plagued mainstream entertainment ever since a junker named Ray easily fought off 3 thugs at a bazaar because she didn't need no man. But insufferable tropes aside, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was just god awful. A very boring, barely comprehensible mess that had clearly been butchered in editing after many reshoots and script changes. Seeing Indy being led around like a dog on a leash by Phoebe Waller-Bridge was horrifying, and the movie had a grand total of one likeable character, Salah, who was in it for about 2 minutes. This is Disney after all, and we have to keep that male-only screen time to an absolute minimum. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny thoroughly earned its place as the year's most deserved flop. Moving straight on to our next category, Worst Newcomer. While we acknowledge the contribution to cultural destruction made by worn-out old junk like the cash grab reboot, The Girl Boss, the 928 millionth superhero movie, and the Disney lore, it is important to make room to celebrate new talent. And we're going to have to make a lot of room to celebrate our first new talent, Lizzo, who blundered into the
white man.
Our next category is Worst Character Assassination. Way back at the start of the woke cinema era, in a 2015 remake of Star Wars A New Hope, a psychotic post-emo villain named Kylo Ren lightsabered his deadbeat dad, Han Solo, and tossed him off a platform into an abyss. The audience reaction to the lamest death ever received by a movie hero was so positive that Hollywood made it a priority thereafter to destroy every male character ever loved by anyone. Luke Skywalker was thrown into his own abyss, Birdshit Island, where he stayed throughout the entirety of the 2 sequel trilogy movies he was in. Just the fate every Star Wars fan had always imagined for him. Lando Calrissian was turned into a pansexual who uses his droid, L3 Waller-Bridge, as a masturbatory aid. Obi-Wan was turned into a defeatist who absconds from his mission to safeguard Luke so he can be led around by a female toddler. And Darth Vader was turned from one of the galaxy's great warlords into a blundering idiot. Outside of Star Wars, Elrond was turned into a boarding school girl in Rings of Power. Every single male hero in the MCU that survived Endgame was turned into an incompetent, bumbling buffoon in order to make his female replacement look better. The Terminator's hero, John Connor, was literally character assassinated, executed in front of the audience in order to make way for the Terminator's new and improved savior of mankind, a 3-foot-tall Latina Mary Sue, who looked like a small child when holding a rifle. And the Terminator himself was turned into a drapes salesman. The result was one of the biggest box office bombs of all time and the death of the Terminator franchise. Captain Picard was turned into a doddering old fool who needed put in his place by his female superiors.
Sheer fucking hubris. You think you could just waltz back in here and be entrusted with taking men and women into space?
Neo, the One, the man who liberated mankind from the Matrix, was dumped in front of audiences as a depressed loser who sits around moaning to a hipster therapist, and when he finally does get out of the Matrix again, only goes back in so he can rescue his
female counterpart.
Any male character that shows up in a Disney live-action remake will be ruthlessly destroyed. To give 2 examples of many, Aladdin's Jafar was turned from this.
If you won't bow before a sultan, then you will cower before a sorcerer! Genie, my second wish. I wish to be the most powerful sorcerer in the world!
Into that.
Genie! For my final wish, I wish to become the most powerful being in the universe.
And in Lar 18, Prince Eric was passed out when he should have been engaging in his suicidally brave kamikaze attack against the Sea Witch. In the live-action Abomination, the heroics were taken care of by a political statement in a CGI mermaid tale. As far as anyone can remember, Willow wasn't even in his own show, but that shouldn't surprise anyone. Disney seemed to delight in depriving little people of acting jobs. Here are the latest victims of Hollywood's final solution to the male question and the nominees responsible for their destruction. Disney, for their emasculation of Peter Pan. The original Peter Pan was a lightning bolt made flesh. He was loud, fun, energetic, and frenetic. A boyish, untamed energy poured out from him and lit up every room he entered. Disney turned him into this.
Were you expecting someone else? If I know one thing about fairies, it's that they don't take kindly to being called bugs. So, I'm Peter Pan. I don't ever need help. Were you expecting someone else?
Ridley Scott, for his bizarre portrayal of Napoleon, having run out of fictional characters to destroy, Hollywood invented a new one, an emotionally incontinent, simpering moron who throws food at public dinners, attacks household staff, slaps his soon-to-be ex-wife, and complains to the English ambassador that
You think you're so great because you have boats!
This unpleasant result of what must have been an ill-advised piece of performance art by Joaquin Phoenix was given the name Napoleon and paraded on screen before bemused audiences who thought that Ridley Scott's Napoleon was supposed to be a portrayal of a French historical figure of note. The BBC, for whatever the hell this was...
I promise I can help him get home and then you'll never see me again.
You're assuming he as a pronoun.
True. Yes, sorry, good point.
My chosen pronoun is the definite article.
Pronoun.
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 Although we suspect that the Doctor being lectured on the use of pronouns by an attention-craving teenager was probably not what Doctor Who fans had been hoping for, we do applaud the show for introducing the first gay black Doctor, allowing gay black men to finally see in the Doctor a reflection of themselves.
I'm black, and I'm gay. Reflection of myself.
Though it should be noted that the gay black Doctor was not the first but the second gay Doctor.
Was it me, or was Isaac Newton hot?
He was, wasn't he? He was so hot. Was that who I am now?
Well, it was never that far from the surface, mate.
Mindy Kaling for her sadistic brutalisation of Fred from Scooby-Doo. And finally, Kathleen Kennedy for her KK-fication of Indiana Jones.
We need to do this.
Me too.
One of the greatest adventurers in cinema history, now a broken down, hollowed out old ruin, made a guest in his own movie and forced to justify his continued presence in that movie to the villain, Helena Shaw.
Get us to the train station.
Us? You going home?
No, I'm going to Casablanca.
I could struggle in vain to articulate the disgust felt by the Indiana Jones fandom at what had been done to our boy Indy. Instead, let us simply be thankful that he is gone now and his suffering is ended. Now cracks a noble heart. Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rhythm. The winner of Worst Character Destruction is Kathleen Kennedy for her annihilation of Indiana Jones.
I'm also very proud to be the first woman.
The first woman.
Moving on now to worst casting. Most major productions this year were appallingly cast, and our nominations list alone does not do justice to the fine work done by Hollywood in making their productions as unwatchable as possible. So here are just some of the woefully cast productions that weren't quite at an awards-worthy level. Lar 17, Peter Pan is now a soft-spoken, wimpy Sri Lankan boy with all the facial expression, emotional range and personality of a soggy milk carton. The Lost Box Tickers have no role in the movie other than to score a few ESG points for Disney and spit political invective in the viewer's face.
You're not all boys. So?
The lead character, Wendy, is played by Mia Jovovich's daughter because she just happened to be the most qualified actress for the role. Tiger Lily has been reduced to a one-dimensional fetishization of Native American culture, dressed in a Halloween costume and told to sound wizened and profound.
Feel the ground beneath your feet.
And who, despite being played by a chubby adolescent, easily tosses grown men aside. The pirates aren't even memorable enough to be forgettable, as that would suggest that their presence registered in the first place. The only thing that kept Lar 17 from a worst casting nomination was the excellent choice of Jude Law to play Captain Hook. Lar 18 for casting a political statement as Ariel, a sedated Javier Bardem as Trident, Awkwafina as Bird, and in what turned out to be the movie's worst performance, David Diggs as Crab.
I'm a dead crab. Life under the sea is better than anything they got going on up there. The king can never hear of this. Okay, listen to me.
Lar 18 was saved by Melissa McCarthy's impressive performance as Ursula and Jessie Alexander as Vanessa, who, though only in the movie for a few minutes, demonstrated more range, emotion and intensity in those few minutes than Halle Bailey did in the entire movie.
Get away from her!
If Jessica Alexander had been cast as Ariel, Lar 18 might actually have made money, and to the movie's credit, Prince Eric dropping Halle Bailey's Ariel like Neo's Morning Glory the second he comes across a woman who looks like this is correct, and we applaud Disney for their dedication to believability in this instance. A viewer can perhaps suspend disbelief enough to accept that there is an underwater merman kingdom ruled over by a psychotic morphine addict.
You're a mermaid.
Yes.
Who has a multiracial harem of underage girls with Stockholm Syndrome, but no one is ever going to believe that Prince Eric would choose Halle Bailey over a woman who looks like this. As with the earlier mentioned joining of hands in a masculine embrace of Chad Glorious bromance, Prince Eric's choice of Vanessa is good and correct. Our final honourable mention is the Marvels for casting Diversity Hire 2539 to play Diversity Token FN2187, also known as Monica Rambeau. Brie Larson as Brie Larson, looking so done that she could be mistaken for a 17th century English poet. The Loki actor's wife, who gave a dreadful performance as a D-grade afternoon TV villain of the week.
Once again, the Skrull have betrayed the Kree!
And Nia DaCosta, cast as a director capable of handling a project that isn't third-rate indie circuit preachy message movie awards bait junk. Only Iman Vellani's efforts kept the Marvels from the worst casting shortlist. The nominees for worst casting are Apple, for their casting of 2030 status Mother Nature Apple. Mother Nature was portrayed by a morbidly obese woman in a black poncho who clearly doesn't spend much time outside. Apple, a company that has planned obsolescence down to a fine art, make several iterations of every new phone and encourage customers to buy a new iPhone every 15 minutes, are cast as an environmentally conscious friend of the environment. And in what was by far the worst casting decision of this disaster, Tim Cook was cast to play Tim Cook.
We've innovated and retooled almost every part of our process to reduce our impact on the planet. But there's still a lot more work to do.
Director X for his casting of Robin with a Y Hood, a cast of tokenistic caricatures so absurd that, were this Canadian-funded TV production a parody of woke garbage, it would have been a masterpiece. Robin of Race Swapsley herself is a social justice-driven, promiscuous, bisexual, black female hip-hop artist, armed home invader and gang leader who, in episode 1, threatens the life of a working stiff security guard in order to steal a high-end car. And if you don't like her, you are, in the words of Director X,
racist.
Ridley Scott for Ridley Scott's Napoleon. The only roles cast in the movie are Napoleon and Josephine. Everyone else is just a nameless prop in massively desaturated period costume. Scott decided that the countless hundreds of important figures in Napoleon's personal life who weren't called Josephine didn't matter, and so didn't bother casting them. Seeing a 50-year-old Joaquin Phoenix play acting as 24-year-old Captain Bonaparte at Toulon was, for me personally, one of the stranger experiences of 2023.
Boats!
Disney for Lar 19. Disney's Snow White remake was so atrociously cast that the movie is being nominated in advance of release. In the initial iteration of the movie, which finished principal photography, the 7 dwarves were played by one little person and 6 actors of varying heights, races, genders, gender identities, sexual proclivities, and whatever else Disney feels is current and diverse. These magical forest creatures, as they are now called, would no doubt have been referred to with a wide range of pronouns and neo-pronouns, which would have changed throughout the movie as the felt identity of the individual not dwarves changed over the course of the massively padded runtime. Following scathing and universal public backlash and accusations of depriving little people of acting work, Disney decided to reshoot the entire movie, delaying the production by a year, and released this rushed image to the public, showcasing how, instead of depriving little people of work with NBA basketball players, now Disney were replacing them with horrifying CGI monstrosities. Yes, Disney are remaking the beautiful hand-drawn original dwarves by turning them into hideous CGI blobs. A perfect metaphor for the moral and artistic collapse of the Disney Corporation itself. Snow White is a box office disaster in the making, and it couldn't have happened to a more deserving production. Oh yes, and Rachel Zegler was cast as Snow White.
Weird.
Jada Pinkett Smith for Queen Cleopatra for casting sub-Saharan Africa as Egypt.
Ancient Egyptians would have had a variety of different complexions, as we find in other African cultures today.
A mixed-race British actress with a giant afro as Cleopatra.
I am a god. Do not disrespect me.
Any male actor sufficiently stupid-looking enough to play Caesar, Mark Antony and Octavian. And by far their worst casting choice, a crazy old lady as a qualified historian.
I remember my grandmother saying to me, I don't care what they tell you in school, Cleopatra was black. I resisted Cleopatra for a really long time. I said, I am not going to study you. I'm not going to study you. Cleopatra was black. I'm not going to study Cleopatra was black. I would have this recurring dream where there was this shadowy figure, certainly an ancient person, clearly a woman, who would say to me, you have to tell my story.
When I heard that Jada Pinkett Smith had been unfaithful to Egyptian history, I wondered why Will Smith had changed his name to Egyptian history.
Fortunately, Jada Pinkett Smith's harebrained scheme was called out for its bald-faced lies, and her absolute abomination of a so-called documentary is the lowest rated show in history. The winner of worst casting is Jada Pinkett Smith for Queen Cleopatra.
If Jada Pinkett Smith had a strand of hair for every positive comment made about Queen Cleopatra, she would look exactly the same.
As terrible as the casting of the other projects were, only Jada Pinkett Smith's Queen Cleopatra managed to invoke the ire of an entire country. Egypt was so enraged by the bastardization of their history that they sued Netflix, and we here at the Worst of Woke Awards wish to extend our fondest wishes to the Egyptian lawyer prosecuting this lawsuit, Caesar Augustus Mahmoud Al-Alpha Chad Magnus.
When I heard that 100 million people were pissed off at Jada Pinkett Smith, well, I wasn't surprised. What guy wouldn't be upset at a woman who never called back after he fucked her?
Now, Karen iPhone, while we appreciate your thoughtful interjections, please bear in mind this is a family show and we can't have...
Will Smith was angry at Chris Rock's mouth for having Jada's name in it, but he should have been more concerned about Jada's mouth for having other men's dick.
Thank you, Karen iPhone. Moving on now to worst superhero. The superhero movie era is over, so we decided to include this category as a fond send-off. And because this year is likely the last chance we'll get to present such an award, the nominees for worst superhero are Captain Marvel. Carol Danvers prosecuted a war of aggression against the Kree, culminating in the destruction of a super AI they relied on for their survival, which led to the deaths of countless millions. She abandoned the child of a dying friend she had promised to take care of. She decimated entire Kree capital ships with no regard whatsoever to innocent bystanders or people brainwashed by the Kree AI. She broke the Don's hand and stole his motorbike for the crime of attempting to flirt with her. And more recently, she got 2 planets destroyed along with untold numbers of people. Literally, the Marvels doesn't tell us how many people have died on these planets, or even what happened to the Singing People planet after Captain Marvel transports out of it. Mentions it once and never again returns to the topic of the fate of an entire race of people. If Captain Marvel had a dick, she would be Thanos 2.0. But she's a woman, and when a woman commits genocide, mass murder, assault, theft, and child abandonment,
That means that it is not illegal.
Our next nominee, Ant-Man's daughter.
You want to help. I get it. I do, Cassie. I really do. But I don't want you wasting your life.
At least I'm still trying to do something with mine.
Our next nominee, whatever the hell Emilia Clarke was supposed to be in Secret Invasion.
You're weak.
And finally, Monica Rambeau, the woman whose sole contribution to culture is the uttering of this line.
They'll never know what you sacrificed for them.
In reference to a town of people enslaved by Scarlet Witch as LARPing props. Monica Rambeau is not a character. She is a dictionary definition diversity token, a nothing sandwich we're all supposed to pretend is delicious because it has brown bread instead of white bread. For anyone wondering why the superhero genre died so quickly following its Avengers Endgame peak, note that every superhero on this list is a woman, and more specifically, a girl boss. The winner of Worst Superhero is Ant-Man's daughter. Cassie Lang was up against serious competition for this award and still took almost half the vote. An audience can tolerate murder, theft, genocide, Emilia Clarke, slavery, and tokenism up to a point, But one thing an audience cannot tolerate is ingratitude. Cassie Lang insults her own father in front of their family because saving half of all sentient life in the universe doesn't count for shit if you haven't destroyed a cop car in a pro-vagrancy riot recently. Cassie represents so much of what is wrong not just with movies, but with modern culture. Kids who have never voluntarily read a book, but who nevertheless know how to fix society. A presentist dismissal of all that came before.
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so.
Zero understanding or gratitude for how good their life actually is, or what their parents and grandparents sacrificed to give them that life. A determination to fix the world's problems while their own lives are a complete mess and they're not qualified to mop the floor at a local mall. A feeling of entitlement that you are owed something because you are you.
We're in 2024 now, and I think it's about time that we had a woman.
Cassie Lang, like Rachel Zegler, hit a cultural nerve and became the focal point of a long overdue backlash. Our next category is Worst Remake. Plagiarized media is disqualified from consideration in the prestige categories, so we have given them their own category. The nominees are Lar 17.
If you went back home, it'll be the end of all our fun, all our adventures.
Lar 18.
You're a mermaid.
Yes.
Lar 19.
She's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
And our final nominee is all of them. Disney, stop doing this. And the winner, with 91% of the vote, is all of them. Disney, stop doing this. The Disney Lar is industrialized plagiarism. It has come to symbolize the stick-in-the-mud Hollywood establishment that is terrified of change, innovation, new ideas, new stories, and really anything that audiences haven't seen 500 times before. And audiences are sick of it. For all their progressive activism, Hollywood is internally profoundly conservative and utterly averse to any change that doesn't have to do with skin color or genitalia, which is why Disney will keep pumping out these godless abomination Lar movies until they have nothing left to ruin of the works created by previous generations of vastly superior artists. Our next category, career most damaged by involvement in a woke project. Before we get on to our nominations,